Hey, we are live.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. That's how we. That's how nobody gets to see on the countdown. So anyway, got to get that Tourette's issue out of the way, and then turn loose on episode for today. We'll BS until people come online.
Excellent.
And so anyway, how's the weather? How was your blizzard last week in Vegas? That looked like it sucked.
You know what? It was kind of weird. We live on the 25th floor, and we talked to somebody who had gone down. Now, I'd been in Dallas-Fort Worth Trophy Club for the last few years, except for the last two. And it snowed. It meant that it snowed on the ground. Well, here, you can have snow. Like I said, we're up high in our building right here. But if you race downstairs and go out on the street, it might actually be water. It was freaking weird until... in our building, there's the 37th floor. The top floor is where you get coffee and shit. And it's also where the pool is outside. So if you went outside, you found like 2 to 3 inches of snow sitting on the furniture, which of course didn't even exist at the ground level. There wasn't any.
That is weird, man.
So I'm looking out and I see the mountains to the southeast, and they still have some snow on them. But yesterday, in the north side, if you go that direction, they were beautiful, like the day of and the day after the snow. It was simply amazing to see all these white-capped mountains. Yesterday, almost none of it. It was almost all gone. Yeah. And I'm like, well, son of a bitch.
Aren't you going to have the hottest day of the year in just a couple days?
God, I hope not. I hope you're not trying to screw me.
No. I saw a headline saying that the hottest day of the year is going to be like next week. And
meaning that it has already. Okay. To date, It's the hottest day. I thought you meant we'd have another 125-degree day.
Oh, no. Hottest of 2019.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense, man. I was about to have a small conniption. In a couple of weeks, we head to London for the London Book Fair, so I haven't even begun to go see how rainy it is over there yet. But that'll be my life, is to come here and then head over there and go from there. New York in May. I'm sorry, I'm traveling already. All right, we have 30 people-ish.
Okay, we got a few people, so and this will be recorded. You can always watch it within the group, and also we'll be cutting them to YouTube and posting them on our 20 Books to 50K registered YouTube channel. All righty then. The first thing we wanted to talk about: common elements between worlds.
Hold on. I'm going to ask you a little bit. What the hell does it mean to say a world building or universe building? What does that mean?
That is a great question, and that's something that we take to heart when writing books. Is you set the stage. I go right into the questions without setting the stage of what are we talking about. World building is those unique elements within which your story resides, and the canvas upon which your story is painted. That's my definition.
So is that like Wikipedia or something? I mean, that was a good definition.
Even my my one thriller that was set in the real United States with the real ISIS as bad guys still had world building, because we can't put those real elements in when we're talking about a coffee shop. So I changed the name and things like that. So how do you manage that? So what would your definition be, Michael?
I wish I could remember yours at the moment, because it sounded very eloquent. Everyone who follows me might or might not realize that, I have no formal training in what I do. Everything is both based on reading thousands of books and just my own understanding. And so I come at it from a different, mode. But for me, characters matter. And so the characters are within something, right? What is that something that they're within? And if you say it's the real world, well, like you mentioned a second ago with the coffee shops, it might be a slightly modified world. Or you try to take out date-specific items, unless you're doing historical thrillers or historical romance. You actually try to change them up a little bit. And even if you do, you're still going to get people accusing you that that president was actually President XYZ, who I happen to like and you happen to hate. And it's like, dude, I am just creating generic presidents because I don't want my book to go out of, it be dated. So we'll still do that. But in coffee shops, as an example, I actually did contact. I had a fan in Sydney, Australia, and I regret not going there this last December. But I got permission to use her coffee shop, so I went on and actually did use a real coffee shop, and I do use real ones from time to time. But going back to the bigger part of your question is, what to me is universe, what to me is a world, and that is, what is the milieu within which my characters are operating? How is it the same as the genre I'm going for? And what 10% have I changed that is different? The reason I stipulate the 10% or 20 if you want is that it seems to be that most readers want to feel comfortable, and then they want something slightly different. So they will want to know that they don't have to understand what is your currency, what is your religion, what is your politics, what is your ditch digging, what is all of this. They want to know, oh, I get this. I'm within a paranormal, vampires, werewolves and ghosts all exist, but we don't have elves and whatever shooting magic. And then, okay, so what's different about this? Or is it just the same? And then you'd better wow me with all your characters.
Yeah, I like that, because you look at J.K. Rowling. She starts in London and King's Cross Station and those things where there's that foundation of familiarity from which the new world is launched, and then build upon that. If you read the books first, which I hope you did, we're readers, and read the books first before watching the movies, you'll see how she unfolded that world before us as we went. And that's jumping to almost the last one, ways to reveal your world. And there's many different models in world building. You have J.R.R. Tolkien's model of you must develop the Elven language plus 5 different sub-dialects and all the other dialects of the language before writing your book. I don't recommend that, because it took him like 35 years to write that book. I go through it as I did in real life. I experience things, see them. Oh, hey, look at this. Oh, wow, Paris. Wow. I mean, you can read about it, but when you see it for yourself, and that's how I almost inevitably will reveal a new world to my readers. Sometimes they'll refer to things, and that's the reveal. It's through the character's eyes, because we don't start with this big info dump of this is the 4th planet from the sun. I don't do that. I say, hey, here he is. He woke up to a blue sky or a green sky or red sky, whatever. And then you see it from there. What about you, Michael?
I believe that sense of wonder that we accomplish when we reveal it slowly is relevant to the reader. I mean, I don't like an info dump, and I remember we don't have this many questions in this as we did 2 or 3 years ago when people would ask, how do I stop from an info dump? The answer is start with some action and just let things happen, because the readers are curious to go along with you. So, but also I think that when we go back just a step and say, how do you create it? I am a inside out person. If you tell me I have to create a world before I start writing a story, I will clam up and I'll go find another job to do. I hate world building that much. I will create the understanding at the highest level of what I need to do, and then I will discover the world as I write what happens to the characters. And when readers are like, I never know what's happening next, it's because neither do I. I can't lay that in since I don't know. Now, I have friends and people that I know who are just the opposite of me. They could create worlds all day long, be happier than happiness itself, and then they will create characters to go in it. I don't understand that model, so I can't even speak to that model because it's so anathema to what I like to do.
I think we're on the same page with that, and I don't like being told what to do. Sometimes an info dump is called for. Sometimes you do have to set the stage, but you don't have to make it a boring ass info dump. You can just explain it.
So
sometimes
BAID.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that's it. That's exactly it. Like a new series I have coming up, in order to set the stage for the book, the first words you read is the op order, giving the colonel his direction to go execute this mission. So they're setting the stage, and that's kind of an info dump because it's like, hey, here, you're going to do this and this and this. And it's like, well, but what about the drama? There isn't any. There's no suspense because he's ordered to do that. Let's see how he gets there. So
that is the suspense in that case. I mean, we're going slightly keen, but
indeed, but it still goes to the world, and then you see the actions. Here's where he is, and then it unfolds from there. So that's I am a big fan of seeing it through the character's eyes and then seeing how it unfolds. And then the world I see is another MC. That's a character in which the things interact, because a world could cause a change in something that's done, whether it's a solar flare or a rainstorm. We were talking about that. If it's raining in London Book Fair, what do? You stay inside. Well, what if it's not raining? Do you go outside?
What if you have to go outside? You know, the contemplation. Well, so, but that brings up something a little bit different. If we talk about some of the worlds, you know, Brandon Sanderson's myth stuff comes to mind, but others where people engage so much with that world, right? And I think that it's very similar to, like, let's say, literary fiction, where some readers love that. That is what really appeals to them. And if they had the opportunity to write themselves, they might just stay in world building. And by the way, if you don't like the world builder, you don't believe you do it well, you can always connect with someone, you know, that loves to do it. I know of one very well-selling author who has a partner who's responsible for the world building, and it goes from there. So, you know, don't limit yourself to understanding what goes on. I had conversations in Colorado Springs at Kevin J. Anderson Superstars conference a few weeks ago. There are something like 20 generic role-playing game rule sets that you can use that can create worlds for you. And so there's no limitation to what you can accomplish to build worlds if all you really like are characters.
I have to say I like the characters, but just seeing it unfold, being an old game master from the 70s, from Dungeons and Dragons and other games, that the world building is a cool part, and the cooler part is how the characters interact within that world. To me personally, other folks, you do what you like. That's a great thing about being an indie and a self-published author. Is if you don't like the world building, yes, go find somebody who does. And I know there's a few people who have posted on other author services within 20 books to 50K that they like doing world building. So hunt them down if you don't, and or look for the online resources of world building. Role playing gaming is a great benefit and a tool that you can use to help you.
If you find I know you have questions, but I keep thinking of stuff. But if you find someone who has a world that you love, I don't think they're going to be too upset if you at least approach them and go, "Hey, I'd like to write some stories inside your universe." You know, maybe come with an idea of what it means financially, but approach them. What's the worst they're going to say? No, you know. But at least they might not even considered having someone write in their universe, and you approaching them. They might not be prepared. If you already have ideas, you can make suggestions. You never know where that opportunity is going to go. And at least for the last 18 months, you know, writing in a single world from multiple authors has been a really big strategy to get, bring readers from one person to another, from one author to another.
I like it. You've got Michael Cooper's Eon 14. You got Chris Kennedy's Four Horsemen universe. You have that Michael Anderle guy's Kurtherian Gambit universe. There's an unlimited potential of what's out there, and I mean that collaborations is a different effort. Building an enticing world starts with the first book that sells. If your world isn't selling in the backs list, then that may not be a good world, or there may be other issues. So bringing other people into a world that isn't already successful is a challenge. So it's cart before the horse. Yeah, but if we have a great world, then people will come. Well, good luck. I mean, you got to find your own way. Of course, it's anybody can pick and choose their way up the mountain of success. But sometimes you need to have a little success first before you can start bringing other people into that universe. And that's where you just have to understand the limitations. If it's not successful, then maybe it's a universe problem, or maybe it's something else.
Yeah, maybe, honestly, let's just be realistic. It could be your writing isn't compelling, but your world is. I mean, it's feasible that is an answer as well. There are, I can think of one universe that where the universe was so compelling that everybody who just heard the concept of the universe is like, I'm in. I want to write in this. It was unique. It was fresh. And, it garnered 5 to 6 people saying, I'm willing to write in here immediately.
I'm reading a comment on Sanderson's class on world building at BYU. Is that online? I don't know who commented there because it's BLive and they don't tell me. But I like that exactly, because you go deep in some areas and you entice them, just like a character. I think all characters are flawed in some respect. So you have the characters, and then they're doing great things or they're doing screwed up things, but you know why. And the world has that same element. Why is this not working? Why don't they have hover cars? Why don't they? And you can go deep. Well, here's the technological thing. And I did that in a few of my books about why they don't have this or why they do have this. And then other things, political systems or things that might just bore the absolute snot out of you, we don't touch. Hey, it's a monarchy. Have a nice day. And then move on from there. because we don't want to burn too much time talking about monarchies.
Well, I think also for those that have watched the old TV show Cheers, the bar was the world. It is what everyone coalesced around, and you knew the bar. It was a character. And in some of my universes, I try to create a Cheers, a bar, or some place that they get together and they talk all the time, so that you have a sense of I'm trying to structure where the reader's like, oh, I'm home. And now I can go visit something new, but now I'm back home again and I feel comfortable. So I look at it from an emotional standpoint, that my world, my universe has something that is familiar, and then something that's Star Trek, oh, gee, this is cool.
Yeah, and I got people did answer. The Brandon Sanderson's classes are on YouTube, all over YouTube. Hopefully they're not copyright infringed on YouTube, but I think they're probably available publicly. Just do a Google search. Brandon Sanderson teaches world building or some bullshit. You'll find it.
Not that his is bullshit, but
I think we answered the question on how much needs to be done before you start writing. I might have a few extra words on that. What about you, Michael?
I'm not sure what you're going to say, but the answer in my case, when I did Arthurian Gambit, I knew that there were going to be 3 sets of books, and I purposely did the first set on Earth so I would have the least amount of world building possible. It's like, hey, here's Earth, here's what's different about it. I didn't have to explain Earth, I just had to explain what was different about it. And I probably thought about this a sum total of 4 hours, I'm thinking.
Okay. That's all you need. My first series with the world building, Free Trader, I said, hey, I want to run a Gamma World adventure, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to tell the story. So I did just enough to know, hey, here's this, some geographical. I'm a big fan of geography. So I hand drew a map, and then I've added to it as the stories went on. So I had my map so I could geographically and chronologically follow the adventure as the character went through this world. And then I added in some creatures, some monsters, some things like that, and built it as I went. But the initial, it was a map, some storyline elements that I wanted to touch on, and that was it. So I think I was probably 30 minutes in the total world building. And
don't do that if you're doing historical romance, the answer is hours and days.
A lot of it, research.
Better get your stuff together. So this is genre specific. I'm space opera. Ergo, it didn't require a whole lot for me.
But Regency, if you're doing historical or you're doing Regency romance, your research, you're not building this world. It's already built. You're just researching it so you get it right. Because if you're targeting those audiences, they're merciless in getting those things right. And you will be rewarded with the sales, with the fans. If you get it wrong, they'll be gone in a hurry.
Right after they 1-star you.
Yeah, you'll get your gratuitous 1-star first. but that's world building. If somebody else has done the world building, then you better study it like my End Times Alaska series, a post-apocalyptic survival series. Before I wrote a scene, I went and drove the area of town. Okay, here's this, so I could visualize everything. I'd stop and just look around. So I probably got the police called on me more than once. They never caught up with me because everything's too far away from everything else. So that was part of the world building process. So I could envision it, so I could give some kind of reality to the reality I was trying to portray in my story. So how much needs to be done before you write? Enough to make it realistic.
And that depends on genre. So a nice waffle on the answer right there.
Well, realistic, even on sci-fi, you have to sell it. You're selling a product. Even a nonfiction book, you're selling a product, and that needs to be the readers need to be sucked in and believe that, yes, this works. Because there's a lot of too much hand wavium in science fiction or fantasy. You lose the readers. You've got to have enough that kernel of truth. As people who get paid to lie, the best lies have a kernel of truth that you can embrace and hold on to.
There's about 17 different jokes that I would, but so in the case of sci-fi, which we both know fairly well, you can stipulate something as like, hey, I landed at the space station, but what kind of space station? Is this a double helix space station? Is this a big circular Death Star space station? You might give a little bit of context, but you understand that your readers know what that means. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to create something new that's not within, general understood tropes, then you need to give more detail for that. Otherwise, you're going to be running down the hallway, and your particular type of space station can handle this, but everyone else is like, haven't they been running 14 miles? What the hell?
Yeah, I've done that. Space station that can hold 5,000 people and then go on and never describe it. Or something I've done is I put it on the cover or included a graphic of some sort and say, hey, here it is. I know you've done that significantly with aliens.
Yes, I hate describing aliens. I'll pay an artist to draw them.
Here's a picture. And this guy.
Okay.
But that also getting the artists on board and finding things that helps. If you're talking about descriptive elements, I leave a lot of stuff very ambiguous, skin color and stuff like that. I just hate this guy. I've done a lot of that. My goal with my first book, End Times, was never say the dude's name. But I got in a position where he met other people, and they're like, hey, I'm so-and-so. And okay, I got to introduce the character. So I used the name 4 times is all. The character's name 4 times in 100,000 word book.
So I'm going to deviate a little bit and go into something that I find really humorous. That guy that you were building and writing about had a wife, and you killed that wife. And what happened to you?
I didn't. I didn't give the wife character enough 3-dimensionality, even though I wanted her to be the Sam Gamgee of my series, the one who really made it carry through. But I didn't do a good job of that, and I left her out of a lot of scenes and didn't provide that. So she was a very shallow character. Not my intent. It's just, hey, I'm learning. And in book 4, which is an addition to the series, because I contracted for the first 3 with TradPub and wrote the first 3, and the fans loved them, and it was a series worldwide bestseller, and all was good and all was right with the world. But they needed another one. They needed closure for the series, so I wrote another book, and I wanted to fix my mistakes from the past. So I killed her and added in a new character that could be the new Sam Gamgee. And here I am in the morning, and my wife always comes in when she gets up. I get up like 5 hours before she does. And I'm writing, and that one scene, it's on the screen, and she reads it, and she gets really angry. Like, I mean, sleeping on the couch angry about killing off her character, which she never claimed. She's like, hey, it's not my, I'm not her. It's okay. And getting remarried within a year. And that just because I had to do that to set the stage to create my Sam Gamgee. And unfortunately, it sold well. it sold well,
She was
but
pissed at you for how long?
that was a week. It was a week of kind of mad at me. I even pulled readers. I'm like, hey, we got this little issue on the home front. if your spouse died and you've got kids, and is a year long enough to wait to start looking for another? Yeah. And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. If you've got, because especially practicality in a survivalist situation, it's being alone is not a good position to be. So
I'm sure that felt good as you slept on the couch.
As I was alone. Yeah.
I've since seen Wendy, and she looks at least enamored with you now, so I guess she forgave you.
Yeah, you bet. So yes, you can do that, but anyway.
Sorry,
don't do that, and if you do, don't let her know you wrote that book or that book exists. Hey, honey, I published a new book. It's selling well. I'm working on this next book. Man, you're gonna love it. What? yeah. Don't.
But what are the odds? What are the odds
that
she comes in at the moment?
That one thing is on the screen, for Christ's sake. Yeah, that was really, really bad. So, what common elements between worlds? What common elements do you put? And these are different worlds. Like for you, KGU and Orsarin, but you had some commonality because once again, if you've developed your readership, assuming you have that book, one book, you've developed your readership likes it, you do another book, and so you've got a mini series going, and your readers are digging it. And now it's like, okay, I'm going to branch out. I'm going to have another book, whether it's with a collaborator, a co-author, or just you have a different series in mind. So what elements do you transfer over to make sure that your readers are comfortable, even though it's a new world?
I'm going to say emotions. And I'll take the Arthurian Gambit, Orsarin, and Protected by the Dam universes to explain this. Arthurian Gambit is very much about justice. It's the thing that was pushing me in my emotions very much. Orsarin was a little bit off of that. It's still about justice, but it's within the law. And so, the fact that those that are individuals that can cause disruption deserve a beatdown. So you still got that sense of justice. And though that emotional connection between Bethany Ann and Brownstone itself isn't that far, you still, as a reader, keep the same emotion, even though I completely one space opera, one urban fantasy. One is out in the stars, one is strictly set in Los Angeles practically, and barbecue, for Pete's sake. But in Protected by the Damned, I went with demons who are helping humans, upset other demons, and you had all these other things, and I did a pen name. And that, and I had off-color jokes. So emotionally, it wasn't the same experience whatsoever. So only a subset of my readers were willing to go into that milieu where, I was pretending I was an 18-year-old kid again and writing shit that I thought was funny. Apparently demons are not that funny, by the way, just, who knew? So that wasn't, but I do believe it comes down to emotions. You can move anything, anywhere. You can go genre hopping if you want. And if you deliver the same emotional experience, the readers will come with you, is my opinion.
And from my limited perspective of what I put in between the various series is I'm a fan of write what I know. And most of my main characters are Marines or have a Marine-like background. And that military mindset in assessing threats and those things that are not threats, and taking that approach and the upright,
like your wife,
the upright position on justice that sometimes you have to sacrifice to win, and that so that's a theme that carries over. And from what I'm seeing from my fans and the input that I get in email and stuff is that it does carry over and that they do like the series. I've had so many come on board later and then go back to my End Times Alaska, which is the very first book I wrote. I read it now and I cringe. I'm like, oh my God, this prose is strangled. This is the flow is, wow, I missed the opportunity to talk about this. And if I were to rewrite it, I'd probably keep half the words and add in twice as many. So, but It's with TradPub. They like it. It sold really well. And I'm surprised that readers who came on board now, after 3 years and 3 million words of publications, and say, hey, I like your stories, and go back to that one and say, hey, man, I love that story. So it's sometimes you can get away with the prose that isn't as good as you'd like, or what you feel is comfortable with, because the readers are always the final arbiter. But what they find is they have that same feeling of gratification, in justice, in winning, in the characters.
Yeah, I like to say that we are drug pushers, and our drugs of choice is either horror or avenging or POW or whatever. But getting back to the world aspect of this, and that is, okay, if you're going to create a certain type of emotion, what kind of world do you need to create in order to allow you to create those emotions? Yeah, you're done with coffee, buddy. So suck it up.
It's empty. It's empty.
Hey, once again, just a note. He's the first one who said that word.
Damn it. I kind of didn't say it, though. It was really mild. It was more mouthed than said.
Oh, no, I'm pretty sure that if we voted, everyone who's writing stuff down, did he or did he not just say that word? So just asking.
Let me check. I'm sure somebody will stand up for you and say, yeah, it was him.
Yeah, I hope so. Because it's right there in the video, for fuck's sake.
At least nobody gets to hear our 5-second countdown before we go live.
Yeah. Oof. I'm still wondering about that. What did you just say?
What? Hey, now we're live, and we weren't before.
All right, so back to, I've got to get you back on track. Back to universes, back to worlds. You have questions, but we got 30 minutes to finish this up, and I need at least 5 minutes to talk about one concept.
Okay. How to build a world Bible. You did it differently than I did.
Well, in the beginning, it was I would go back to the previous books and research. What did I say?
Search is your friend.
Yeah, so I ended up having to pay people to build the Bible. Afterwards, the way that I do it now is I will put a little bit more effort up in the beginning to create a Word document where I stipulate some of the high-level things that are going on. And then depending on who I work with, they often have the responsibility. We'll mention the JIT helped fix those things where, we were wrong. It's like, oh, they can't do that? Son of a bitch.
Yeah, we are the worst when it comes to, and they launched through the what? They can't do that. It killed the last ship that did that. When?
Well, yeah. In that respect, though, I think part of it is if you have a universe as big as Arthurian Gambit, where practically no one has read all of the books except JIT. They're the group that has read, an Age of Magic book over here, and then they've read something in the Age of Empire over here, and then they've read Age of whatever
expansion,
and then they're like, oh no, you can't do this because over here this is done, and the person writing the Age of Expansion has no idea that something was set in place in a book that came out a month ago, but is in fact 300 years in the timeline earlier.
Yeah, and that's the JIT. They've my insider team. They keep me on the straight and narrow with the remembering what I said things can do in the world. But personally, I do keep a spreadsheet, and it's just haphazard. It's just a list of here's names, places, and times and things. And just as simple as that, it's all I need is a trigger, mainly as a search word, so I can go back if I have to an older book and pull it up. And I'd like to think that my memory is flawless, and I can guarantee it's not, because of having all the books open and hey, I created this world and I created these characters and I don't remember jack shit from it. So the insider team has helped immensely with that, as well as my little spreadsheet with the terms and stuff.
I owe John Ringo, should I ever meet the man, a huge apology, because I was reading one of his Ghost series and just laying into him. How could he forget that he did this? It's right here, and I'm like, that was 7 books before. I'm pretty sure I've missed stuff 2 books before when I was writing. It's like, oh, how did I ever have anything bad to say about an author forgetting something?
Terry Henry Walton Chronicles, Book 1. Michael asked me to write it to fill the space on the post-apocalyptic with a Marine main character. No problem. I took it, embraced it. We went back and forth on, hey, here's how you need to write it. Your paragraphs are too long, this stuff. Okay, so I wickered how I wrote and hopefully achieved that effect. And I'm like, hey, I need names for 4 werewolves. And Michael's like, oh, here you go. And book 2 comes around, and all of a sudden, Simmons is now Timmins. And we found that out. And Michael was, I mean, back and forth. This was the early days where Michael was reading every word that I wrote, and we were going back and forth and talking about this almost every phone call every couple of days. Hey, what do you think about these new words? And so I wrote 1 and 2. Michael read 1 and 2 as we were going, and still we all missed that. And the Just in Time team, they missed it. We found out in book 6 when somebody's like, hey, I'm listening to the audio. Oh, no. And is Simmons Timmins? And I'm like, oh my God, I changed the name. And book 6, the audio was already out. We can't change any of this shit at this point. So it's like, okay, we have to claim that one. We missed it. And I went back to my notes. I even wrote it down, Simmons. And then like 5 lines later, I've got Timmins. I'm like, how in the hell did I do that? But I didn't even search my own notes well enough because I knew what it was. Yeah. But I really didn't. But it didn't. It was a minor character to a major character, and I blame Michael.
So my older brother's name is Daryl, Darryl, and I decided to put him into into the books as a character. But I decided I would spell it differently, so no one would claim, because I was a really smart young author, no one would claim that I was taking my brother's name. Well, unfortunately, I've written my brother's name, Daryl, for 48 years at this point. Well, not 48, but 40 years at this point. And I know how he spells it. So it doesn't matter how much I think Darrell is the appropriate spelling. I screwed up multiple times. And finally, I don't know if we still have the freaking wrong spelling in the books. Thank God it's not, it's Daryl and Daryl and not Simmons and Timmins.
Yeah, two different. The audio was pretty revealing.
Yeah.
So World Bible, I use a spreadsheet. I see people use Scrivener's pretty good for that. All different kinds of things, Evernote, Story Shop, whatever you use. Just make sure you use it early. That's the big call, is use it early. Yeah. I did that with my free traders. I had these columns, I had everything, and it was too much. It was more than I needed for the stories I was writing. But later, I tried to do the narrow version, and I needed more. So
in Scrivener, actually, they have the
you
notes
never go
feature.
Back.
Yeah. In Scrivener, they have the notes feature. So I would put a heading saying this is book 9. I'd fill in all my notes for book 9. And then when it was time for book 10, I would copy book 9, delete the actual writing, but I would have all my notes and everything else that I had built up in all of the books previous would be there available. And then I'd make a book 10 and I'd write any notes in. So now because of Scrivener, those notes would come along with me. So just FYI.
And sometimes you just have to kill a character because you're tired of spelling his name. So
I suggest that's a better reason than killing it because it's a potential love interest that you didn't want to deal with. Because screw this love interest. Yeah,
I wrote it wrong, so I'm going to kill it and get another one that looks just like it that I can write better. Yeah. But the World Bible, I think one of the important things that I didn't mention was world building, story arc. Your story arc is painted on this world canvas. You have got to make sure that story arc stays true in science fiction. You have to think up front. Am I going to have faster than light travel, or am I not going to? And how do characters get from point A to point B? Because if you're doing a hard science, then you've got all these restrictions that you need to work within. You can't all of a sudden jump out. So your consistency, your story arc, you have to make sure, because if you're going to visit planets 100 light years away and you're going to do it in a single lifetime, you need to have faster than light travel or a wormhole or a gate or something like that. So make sure that your story arc doesn't require that, because otherwise all your characters are going to be dead. And it's going to be like the 9th generation on a generation ship that's finally going to see this new world. And although that's interesting, Not if you're an action adventure kind of book. You have to go through 9 generations of characters. So, and just caution you, your world is within this arc.
Travel is interesting. Even on Earth itself, how do my characters get from point A to point B fast enough to where the story stays interesting? It got to a point in my book where I needed them to be in USA one point and I needed them to be in Australia in another. And I'm like, okay, if we went on real planes, you're talking 15 hours. If you're talking, supersonic, okay. And, I would build contraptions just to get them faster from point A to point B. I would contrive it.
Plot devices, indeed. And that's your story arc. How are you telling your story? If you're talking chronologically, minute to minute, and I remember reading one of your books, and there was like one line, and then it was a scene change. One line as these different elements are fighting.
Bad.
Antarctica, man. One word, Antarctica.
There were Nazis there, man.
It was, yeah. So they write one line before the next person comes in. They get their one line. But all of those things. So how you shape that story within the world, and you find that we keep coming back to the story and the characters. No matter what the world is, it's going to be the story and the characters. So if you change a little thing like Simmons and Timmins, and you still have the character doing these things, it's okay. The readers will be very forgiving if they're loving the story. So if a blue sky is azure, or something else cerulean, it's all okay. You can go to whatever depth you want, but you don't want to lose the characters and lose the story. Like Michael's famous Antarctica scene with one line in between scene changes. It flowed. It was very fast, and I actually had to go back because I got lost. But still, it's the story and the world. Okay, everybody knows Antarctica. He didn't have to describe anything. Just like it's really fucking cold. There's snow and there's all this stuff happening, and it's cold.
That has a lot to do with the fact that I don't like building worlds. It isn't what makes me happy. And so if I'm staying in my happy place, then characters are doing something fun. And it happens to be that my readers appreciate that. Now, if you're talking about readers who go into it who love world building, they love that. Guess what? They won't stick around. I mean, you can't be everything to everyone with your world. And for those that love creating worlds and you create poor characters, people who enjoy characters won't stick around to check out your world. Just recognize that you're always giving up something.
You've got, I use J.R.R. Tolkien as one extreme, and then we have the other extreme of no world. It's the two-dimensional flatland. So how do you fill in those colors and those shapes in such a way that it supports your story? Because to me, it always comes back to the story. Are you telling the one that readers want to read? I don't target Tolkien fans because I don't tell that kind of story, and I'm not going to relate to them in the same way.
Absolutely. So what's the next question? He's sitting there.
Other aspects of world building that may be unique for each genre, just like tropes.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. What is the trope website? Do you remember it off the top of your head? Maybe someone who's listening will give it to us. But there's a trope website where some individuals are claiming like, yeah, I learned the URL for that, and then I lost like a day and a half just reading all the different tropes that were going on. Obviously, if you have contemporary. I'm only vaguely associated with romance, so I understand, if you have the billionaire, well, then you're going to have what's around the billionaire lifestyle. That's one of the things that people do is they want to lose themselves, and they don't have $1 billion, so they'd like to, be a part of that. And so the world matters at that point because it's what they get to live vicariously through your characters in this world. And one of the reasons we enjoy sword and sorcery is, or certainly for myself, is I enjoy the idea that I could throw a freaking fireball and blow up some shit. I want to vicariously live through that. And so I want to be in a world where that can occur. And you have other ones. I mean, I could go on and on, but in the end, the reader must want to experience this. And that's going to go back to your marketing, which of course is what we're really, we tend to focus on.
Looks like tvtropes.org.
Bingo.
That's what people are saying.
That one. So, do check that out. I think you're going to find a lot of interesting aspects of that. It was overwhelming to me. I used, from just reading a bunch, there are things that interested me. And since, I didn't create my success on following others, but rather building something I wanted to read. Therefore, I'm the best marketing person for whether or not I find something interesting. Do I always get it right? No, because there's overlaps between what someone else might find interesting, Arthurian Gambit as an example, and what they won't find interesting, Protected by the Dam as an example. And yet I do find both of those fun.
And that if you find a world isn't working,
drop it and move on. I'm not, I only had two things. I wanted something where my fans wanted to reread the stories, which is character, and it could be world, by the way, if you get those type of readers. And the other one is I wanted to make money. So if something's not making money, then I will make sure that the fans are happy. We close it off, and I'm on to the next thing.
Yeah, same here. Sharing the wealth as it may be, and allowing others to build worlds that we both get to adventure in, and then sharing those with the readers and finding what the readers are really getting into. Because I launched 2 new series in the last month, End Days and Mystically Engineered. And End Days is really resonating well, and unfortunately Mystically Engineered is not. Looking at they're 2 very different worlds. One is post-apocalyptic and the other is dragons in space. And I hit the marketing in a way that I think I gave them both an equal chance. But End Days is really resonating well. It's moving forward. It's gaining traction. It's the pyramid climbing upward of sales, whereas Dragons in Space is drifting. It's just drifting off.
Yeah.
So how much am I going to invest in going forward? Well, the one that's resonating, even though I have 2 co-authors that are both equally committed and doing the best job they can, it's just sometimes it doesn't work without so much extra effort that I'm going to, let's say, exploit success. The one that is working well, we're going to keep working, find what really is resonating with it, and do a little more than that with that. The Dragons of Space was only 3 books planned to begin with. The End Days was 4 planned to begin with, but we may go beyond that if we keep seeing this continuous pyramid of success. And that's the world building. We have built a world where people like it. The other one, not so much. And we did more of the world building in the Dragons in Space one, where we described stuff, we put stuff into place, we gave more history. The End Days, it was just like, big truck, dog, driving.
Are you saying you have a Clint Eastwood story here?
Oh man, I guess it could be considered a spaghetti post-apocalyptic Western.
Well, I dare you to put that as your subgenre or your genre.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking that dare. I'm not taking that dare.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about real quick was this universe called the Zoo. And it's something that LMBPN has been doing, and it was a built universe. Now, we've made some serious mistakes in our history, in our short 3-year history, with building universes, which one of them is, putting too much money into art before we even found out, does anyone even like the story, right? But one of the things that I want to accomplish with LMBPN is creating an opportunity for us to work with authors from around the world in multiple languages. And in order to accomplish that, I needed a universe that would allow, say, someone from China, someone from UK, someone, name a country, and they would have a location in this universe that was not so different that I had to spend 30 books to explain what was going on. So there are some caveats when you're bringing in collaborators into a universe, and is how much homework do they have to do in order to accomplish it. So Zoo is like, okay, the Zoo, depending on the time frame, is essentially our world with a location in Africa, in the Sahara specifically, which is an alien jungle surrounded by a bunch of walls to keep all the alien flora and fauna inside, or Earth dies. I mean, that's the concept, and then you can get into the details, and that's easy enough to understand. And then we went through and I described where I built where if, author A, Martelle Craig, decides to go in there and he creates some monsters, and those monsters are never seen again, which is a problem typically for continuity, that we have a reason that that happens. And so you have to figure out, in this case, what happens inside your world when there's a continuity issue or there's a translation issue. And so once you have that world, you have to figure out how you're going to market that world. And we're looking at drafted digital universes as a model. Otherwise, I can tell you that trying to pay people all around the world and for their little piece is a real problem. And so inside your universe, if you're thinking world building and you're thinking you'd like to bring someone else in, I'd suggest perhaps taking a look at their product, because they are going to take 10%. Let's point that out right up front. And if you'd like to keep the majority of your money, maybe you do Amazon alone, but just recognize even that if you get 10 collaborators, you're going to be spending a day or two having to deal with who gets what money. So just be aware of what you're saying you're going to do. And yet Drafted Digital Universe is what they're trying to accomplish, is paying everybody with you, the universe owner, having permission who gets to publish. So unlike, say, the Amazon one that Amazon Worlds that closed down, it isn't a situation where anyone can do it. You can stipulate, hey guys, I approve, person A, person B, person C. Anyone else, they're going to have to get approval, and then they'll take over from there. But within that universe, we are creating art. I mean, it's probably going to end up being a six-figure investment, of which we've maybe brought back 20 to 25K so far in doing this. And it could be a situation that fails dramatically. We don't know. But it is a huge universe play that's around the world. And we'll see how it works in 2019. But it is something that, is next gen universe world building.
I like that. And talking about world building, somebody asked a question. I thought we touched on this, but maybe we weren't specific enough. How do you build out your worlds? Or specific brainstorming techniques? I say that we come up with the overall story arc, which of course you're thinking world because your arc has to happen somewhere and people are doing something. So you have that story arc. Now the world needs to not counter that. It needs to be, once again, the canvas upon which your story arc is painted and the environment in which your characters do what they do. I consider the world as an additional character, because if I need to move my characters, my team, from here to there, take them off track, then the world needs to do something to make them do that, whether it's a big sandstorm or who knows what. And so the world, I build it out as I go based on the stories. We look at the story arc. So brainstorming, it's scene to scene within this general world. I envision the world, and like Michael said, he spent a couple hours, and here he had the Kurtherian Gambit universe, the initial framework that he then fleshed out later.
And to answer it is, I fleshed it out in the middle of stories. So when we came up to the Age of Magic, I worked with Chris Raymond and Ellie Brabant, and at that moment, we probably spent 20 to 40 hours all on the phone and stuff, trying to make sure we understood where that piece actually applied. And so you think about it, that's three of us. So that, let's say it's 50 to 100 hours worth of time in an aspect of a universe where I spent 4 hours to start it. Doesn't that seem a little topsy-turvy? And the answer is, you're going to spend the time somewhere. You can spend 100 hours before you write a book. You can spend 100 hours if you get to that point in the story where you need that information. Since I tend to come from IT, I look at it as a value proposition. I'm going to spend X amount of hours up front. I'm going to get a product that I'm going to see if people want. And if they do, I'm willing to spend more money, time, effort to make it more rich. If they don't want it, I'm on to the next story. That's just a personal opinion of how to do these things.
But in programming, you debug. You write your program, but then you debug it. So as we find things, because as we found things later, and I did this repeatedly in the Terry Henry Walton Chronicles, was I wrote things and you're like, oh shit, that you can't do that in my universe. Okay, well, in a few sentences, guess what? You can if you debug it properly. So it's just how you approach it, but identifying it before the readers get to it, because you don't want to take the readers out of the story in a way that they're not coming back. Because that's, if we have a shuttle doing something a shuttle absolutely cannot do, then when the readers hit that, if it's right there in black and white, then you lose them. But if you've already set the stage, because if they come up on a forum saying, oh my God, I can't believe the shuttle did this. But it's not one of those shuttles. Early in the book, they said it was one of these shuttles. Okay. So it could do that as opposed to not being able to do this cool thing. It had to do the less cool thing.
I think one of the interesting things for me from us discussing this is the fact that it is a risk situation. If you spend more time building your world up front, you have less risk in the future of screwing it up and then having to fix it, which we have. Arguably, we have had to deal with that. But if Criterion Gambit hadn't made money in the beginning, I would never have invested my life in something I would never use. So that's important to me, but not to other people. And so, it's that hashtag probably situation, but it is risky, right? Craig didn't read all 50 or 60 books, the bastard. And so he didn't know. I've been waiting years to tell you that. And so like purple eyes, what werewolf woman has purple frickin' eyes, Craig?
You approved that because it was really cool.
And by approve it meant you told me and shit showed up.
and hey, here's the cover with the purple-eyed werewolf. Oh, yes. Wow. Okay. I'm okay with that now, you bastard.
And so you do look at it as a risk situation. And so I just want to make sure people are aware of that. Do as much upfront and what are you comfortable with? Because it would be a shame for a person to take away from this conversation, I need to spend 100 hours building a world and never do the story because that's too much effort. Or conversely, for a person going, I need to write this story before I spend 100 hours in the world when they really need to do the world because that's what works for their personality.
Yeah.
Fortunately, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, unfortunately, there's no one answer. There just never is, except, great cover.
And probably everything is probably. Because you have to admit that Criterion Gambit didn't have the best covers to begin with. They were good, and they got people in there. But you changed them as quickly as you could, and then you've changed them since.
Yeah,
it's still the world. The probably thing. You have to find the balance that works for you. How much do you want to do ahead of time? Because that also, from if you're results oriented, as we are, which series is working, End Days or Dragons in Space, and you got to publish the book. You have to get input from the readers, and you can't do that if you're devising 7 different Elvish languages. You're just doing cool stuff, and at that point, you're setting the stage. And just how long are you going to set the stage before you send the actors up there?
Hashtag probably. He spent 35 years, and they made billions of dollars off that world.
That's not him though, because he died. So his family,
he still got to see
it. he provided for his family, and that's it's however you want to do it. And he had a full-time job that he loved. Mm-hmm. So I'm not knocking anybody. If you have a day job that you love, you write part-time, you publish 1 book a year. That's great. You have a day job that you hate and you write well and you can only do 30 minutes of a day. You do as much as you can and you find, is this going to have legs? Is this going to support me? Is it going to save my sanity? Then you need to do what you have to do to realize success. And I posted this morning in the group, which is shut down for new posts because it's Sunday, about what you need to do. You need to learn. And as you publish something, you get better. And that's why I referred earlier about my End Times Alaska. It was the first book I wrote. I cringe at some of the words, but the story was sound. And it resonated well with enough readers that even people who jump on board now, they can go back then and say, hey, I like the story. It was a great story. Yes, I like the way you write now. Okay. And people understand that with your journey because you've got those publication dates on there that says this book is 4 years old. So the newest book, I would hope, is written better to my definition of better, and that even the readers will say, yes, it's written better, more smoothly, good flow, but still I like this story.
I think one thing that if I went back to Criterion Gambit, Death Becomes Her, and tried to rewrite that, the question I would have is, would it have the same raw emotional appeal? I write smoother now. Does that mean that I write better? Not necessarily, because I had those emotions are what, pushed me 3 years ago to do that. So we don't know. So I hesitate to even touch it.
Yeah. And J.R.R. Tolkien, yes, he was a linguist. He was a historical linguist. My my wife has a PhD in linguistics, and she teaches linguistics right now in the university. But she doesn't write. She hasn't devised 7 Elvish languages. So
I see that, she's apparently not pushing hard enough, or you're not asking her to accomplish stuff for the
that's
family.
right. That's right. I mean, I need my sugar mama. So get working on them Elvish languages, damn it.
She's not here right now, is she?
Yeah. Orc, make it sound rough.
Yes. Although you could ask her to do like a 500-word treatise on if you were to make an orc language. I wonder if she'd enjoy that.
Yeah. What's the Yol language sound like?
Yes.
If you have mandibles getting in the way of
the click-clicks.
Your labials.
All right, man. We have accomplished it, man.
It's been an hour. We answered all of our questions. We answered a few questions that people posted. It still comes through live. It says comment from Facebook user and shoots through. We tried to address those things that we thought pertinent to the show, and we'll do this whenever we're not traveling. So we'll try to make it a weekly event and hope you guys enjoy. We'll cut this to YouTube. Thanks to Elaine Bateman, Ann Lown, and somebody else was involved, Sam Livey, and some other folks from the admin team. I asked, hey, how do you take a Facebook Live video and put it on YouTube? And they're like, hey, here's all these education videos. And I said, hey, I think I wasn't clear in my circumlocution. I have no intention of doing it myself. I'm too busy. So who could do this for me? And they're like, oh, hey, we could. And they stepped up and took care of us. So you'll see this on YouTube shortly because we have good people who volunteer to help. So thank you all, and peace, fellow humans.
Take care.